Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2018 State Assessment, Test Security, Ethics, and Administration Training. Let's start off with test preparation practices. You'll need to carefully read sections 3 through 6 in the 2018 Examiner's Manual. Provide students with the opportunity to learn the content and vocabulary included on the test. Use state, district, and curriculum standards as a resource for instruction. Integrate the teaching of test-taking skills within regular classroom instruction and assessment. Use interim assessment data to inform instruction. To help you get started on this, please review information at the following link. Ensure that all accommodations provided to a student on the state assessment are done regularly on all instructional assignments, as well as classroom, district, and standardized assessments. Assure that students are exposed to the KITE client, testing format, environment, and practice test. Students can access these through the KITE client. Accommodations are tools and procedures in the area of presentation, response setting, and timing scheduling that provide equitable access during instruction and assessment for all students. For a child to receive an accommodation on any state assessment, it must be documented and coded in the child's IEP. There are a variety of examples shown here. And also in the test type accommodation sheet, which is located in your building Google Sheet. The accommodations must be provided on a regular basis throughout the school year. If they are not, they cannot be provided on the state assessment. Test type accommodation Google Sheet. Grade level teachers or content area teachers will complete this task in the Google Sheet under the Test Type Accommodation tab. For all students that will receive special accommodations and or for those taking a different test type, such as the DLM. Specific details about accommodation codes and text-to-speech are located under the TT Accommodation Coding Reference tab in your Google Sheet. Here's an example of the spreadsheet that is located in your Google Sheet. You will need to find the appropriate red tab and use the TT Accommodation Coding Reference tab to help you complete this task. A little bit more about testing accommodations. This is new this year. If a student is coded for accommodations, the teacher no longer needs to submit the child's IEP or the pages that express information about their necessary accommodations to the building test coordinator, but you must be able to show IEP evidence if it is ever requested by the district and or building test coordinator. On the other hand, if a child is coded for text-to-speech, the form at the right must be completed and submitted with the IEP information to the building test coordinator before testing begins. Revisions can be made to the TT Accommodation Sheet under the TT Accommodation tab if changes are made to the child's IEP before test administration. Just a reminder, if updates are made, you must inform Holly so she can make changes in the KITE portal as well. PMP protocol. For DLM assessments, the SPED teacher will enter the child's PMP information and each child's complete first contact surveys in the KITE portal. For the general assessment, on February 26th, Holly will enter the PMP accommodations into the KITE portal using the TT accommodation collected by each building. Inappropriate use of accommodations. Reading to students any text, including isolated words, in the reading ELA passage on the ELA test is prohibited. Violations will result in the student being counted as not tested. Use of a calculator on the non-calculator portion of the math assessment is prohibited. This prohibition applies to all students, including 504 and SPED IEP students. If a student uses a calculator on the non-calculator portion of the assessment, the test will be invalid, and the student will be counted as not tested. Use of teacher-generated or student-generated journals, notes, and logs, etc. is prohibited on the ELA math, history, government, and science assessments. Use of commercially made teacher-made or teacher-generated graphic organizers is also prohibited. Acceptable test practices. Acceptable test practices are available to all students. These are not considered accommodations and are not documented in a child's IEP 504 plan, ELL-IP, or on a SIP. If a student raises their hand, a teacher may pronounce a single word, a single distractor, or a single question that appears on the assessment. Exception, a teacher cannot pronounce any word that appears in the ELA assessment passages. This is not considered an accommodation and can be done with all or any student. The teacher should use professional discretion regarding the number of times a student may request. Students are allowed to use graph paper, blank paper, acceptable manipulatives, and other materials that are approved. In math and science, manipulatives that are routinely used in the classroom can be used during test administration and should be. The manipulative must be chosen by the student. The teacher may neither suggest a particular manipulative nor insist that a manipulative be used. If you have a question about whether a particular manipulative is allowed, please email me the question and I will contact KSD to acquire an answer. In science, students can use a calculator. It will be available in KITE. On math assessment, calculator usage on math. 3 through 5, there is no calculator allowed. 6 through 8, grades will have a basic or will use a basic 4-function calculator and a scientific calculator. These are made available to them or they can use a personal calculator as well this year. This is something that is new. So again, students can use a personal calculator or can access the one that is made available through KITE. 10th grade will have a basic 4-function calculator and a graphing calculator. Again, new students can use their personal calculator or can use the one available made through the KITE client. Calculators will not be made available on the computational portion of the assessment, and those who are proctoring assessments must make sure that students using their personal calculators are not using a calculator on the computational portion of the assessment. Online tools are available to help all students as they take the KITE online assessments. A little bit about ethical issues before testing. Teachers and test administrators must read sections 3 through 6 of the 2018 State Assessment Examiner's Manual prior to test administration and follow the guidelines and instructions during administration. Don't forget to remove or cover bulletin board displays, fact tables, charts, and diagrams, and other instructional materials that may give assistance or disadvantage or advantage during testing. Have appropriate manipulatives available for math and science. Again, student use is optional. Teachers will need to bring these to the testing location and will also provide them to staff members testing students in a separate location, for example, small group or one-on-one. Do not use actual or altered test questions, clone or parallel for practice or instruction. Teachers are not allowed to teach or review the content assessed indicators on the same day the content area assessment is being administered. Once testing has started, all reviewing should cease. Prior to taking any assessment, encouragement to students can be offered. Help students approach testing in a relaxed and positive manner. Prior to entering the test environment, it is appropriate to go through the test reminders with students. You're welcome to add additional reminders to this master list if you would like. Once you have entered the testing environment, login information and scratch paper can be distributed. Scratch paper cannot be graded, and you cannot require that students show work and or take notes on that scratch paper. Moving on to ethical issues during testing. Eliminate distractions such as bells, telephones, school intercom systems, etc. Administration need to be in charge of taking care of this. Do not rush the student. Give them as much time as they need to complete each section of the assessment. Actively monitor the testing session. Move around the room, which provides encouragement to students to focus on their work. Do not coach or cue students in any way during test administration. This includes gestures and facial expressions. Do not respond to questions during testing that would help the students to understand the question, aid them in responding to an item, or encourage them to edit, redo, or change a response. Do not answer students do not ask students how they got an answer. Do not do anything that would let the students know whether an answer is correct or not. Students may use blank paper to show and/or check their work. This must be collected and destroyed upon completion of the entire test. When students are finished, the proctor should verify the in-review screen upon completion of the test to see that all questions have been answered before a student exits or ends the test session. The proctor may not go back and review each question individually with the student. And finally, ethical issues after testing. Make every attempt to test students that were absent during the scheduled testing window. In regard to reactivation, to have a student reactivated, the following information must be provided in the Google Sheet under the Reactivation tab, which I'll show you an example of on the next slide. Student name, grade assessed, subject area, part or session, reason for reactivation, the date, actual testing time, and the person requesting the reactivation. Once this information is entered, the test proctor or teacher must let the building test coordinator know that a student needs to be reactivated. He or she will then reactivate them in Kite. Here is an example of the reactivation log that will be completed by the teacher. If you are a paraeducator administering an assessment, you will need to make sure just to provide the information requested so the teacher can enter this information into the reactivation log. Ethical issues after testing continued. Here's a little bit more information about reactivation and some changes for this year. New this year, if 90 minutes plus have passed since a child was logged in and they have not completed a part or session, the test session does not have to be reactivated before they can complete the part or session. The student will just be able to log back in and continue taking the test. When leaving a test session that is in progress, the student will need to enter Control-Alt-Delete or simply shut the computer down. Do not end the test session. If a student ends the test session without having an adult check to see if the student actually completed the session, the student must be present when the test session is reactivated. This must also be recorded in the reactivation log. If a student appears to be answering randomly or isn't showing effort, immediately end the test session for that student. Contact the building test coordinator about the student's test session. Once information has been entered into the reactivation log, the session may be reactivated and the student allowed to complete the assessment. If all test parts are completed and a teacher wants to reactivate a student test part, this must be approved by Holly. The test coordinator may not reactivate a student test part. The only exception to the rule is for students who have not answered all test questions contained within a test part as noted in the Kite portal monitor status. Test security, materials, and computer screen. Except where explicitly allowed as described in the Test Administration Manual, electronic materials used during testing may not be printed or created. Do not store or save on computers or personal storage devices any test items. Test items may not be shared via email or other file sharing program or be reproduced by any means. Do not take pictures of assessment information. Do not review test or analyze test items before, during, or after the assessment is administered. Do not discuss any specific test items on the test with students or colleagues before, during, or after administration of the assessment. Do not construct answer keys so the test could be scored locally. Do not write or reproduce test materials. Test materials may not be copied, reproduced, or paraphrased. Storage of test material before, between, and after. Check out and or distribute test materials immediately before the testing session. Collect testing materials immediately following the test session and return them to the building test coordinator. Copies of the assessments will be secured and locked in the test coordinator's office. This includes paper, pencil, and or Braille. Test coordinator must keep the following documents in the office: paper, pencil, and Braille forms, test type accommodation schedule reactivation log. This is now in the electronic Google Sheet, and copies of the IEP pages with the required documentation for the text-to-speech accommodation. Report any breach of security, loss of materials, failure to account for materials, or any other deviation to your building test coordinator, who will report it to the district test coordinator, who will then report to KSDE. Reporting of item issues. Tremendous effort goes into the review of state assessment items, but occasionally there is an error or a typo which gets by. Both KSDE and CET want to be informed of item issues for review and follow-up. If an error is verified, it will be corrected, and if necessary, student scores will be adjusted. However, due to test security issues, we expect administrators and teachers to abide by the test security administration guidelines in the examiner's manual. Therefore, if a student questions or the correctness of an item, follow the procedures below. Procedure is defined on the test security fact sheet. First, to the student, repeat the information from the directions, teacher print directions, or kite directions. Choose the answer that you think is best. There's one correct answer or best answer to each question. Carefully read the question and work the problem. Second, collect the following information and forward the information to your building test coordinator, who will then forward it on to the district test coordinator. State ID number to aid in test identification. Do not share name, building, or district info. Content, area, and grade of the test, section or sessions or part, and question number. Please do not forward the item stem, any answer choices, or narrative descriptions of the item via email. These are live secure test items, and do not take pictures of the item to send. However, it is helpful to know what the issue is. For example, no right answer, multiple correct answers, A and C are both correct, a word is misspelled, the sentence is grammatically incorrect. When it comes to a problem with reading passages, when possible, please provide the issue and the paragraph number and the sentence number within the paragraph. For example, 12 paragraph starts with the dog, third sentence, the cat's name, issue, the name of the cat is misspelled. Ticket and login procedures is next. Students will use the same username and password for all assessments. The login tickets will be printed and distributed to test proctors by the building test coordinator. Students will also be given a common daily access code. The building test coordinator will retrieve the daily access code for each test from the Kite Educator portal. Building test coordinators will enter daily access codes into the Google Sheet under the Daily Access Code tab. The test proctor will then provide the access code to students so they can log in and to a specific test session. The daily access code expires each day at 5. However, if a student does not finish or is unable to take the testing on a certain day, the next day's access code will enable them to access and take the assessment. Here's an example of where you can find that information in your Google Sheet under the yellow tab. Building test schedules. Specific information about the assessment schedule for your building is located in the Google Sheet under the master schedule. Building test coordinators will enter building test schedule information into the Google Sheet. The deadline for completing this task is before testing begins in your building. If changes are made with the schedule must be updated in this Google Sheet by the building test coordinator. Training completion sign-off. After watching this training video and reading sections 3 through 6 of the 2018 Examiner's Manual, please follow the directions below. For licensed staff, open the training sign-off form. Type in your first and last name, school name, and date. If you have questions about ethics administration or test security, type them into the right side of the Google Sheet. Classified staff. A sign-off sheet will be available in the office of your building test coordinator. Please sign this form by writing your name and providing your signature and the date after you have completed this training. If you have questions about ethics administration or test security, please email Holly Francis with your questions. By signing this form, you are agreeing to abide by all policies, procedures, and regulations set out by KSDE with testing and the information shared by your district test coordinator. Just a little bit of additional information. Teachers, the link to this training slideshow is available in your building Google Sheet and is located under the Assessment Resources tab in the training section. It is also, or has also been emailed to teachers and para-educators. The highlighted areas in blue in this slideshow are live links, so please access them if needed. Thanks again, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact Holly Francis at 775-5484 or send her an email. Thanks again.